All right, welcome to another episode of Tax Pros Unplugged. I am here with my friend Jared Foos. I am Kelly Bender, and we're going to switch it up a little bit today because one of the reasons I guess Jared and I get along so well, other than both having a great sense of humor, is that we operate multi-site offices. So we're not solo practitioners, which I know a lot of tax professionals are. And we have grown offices through acquisitions. And so there's a whole different world that opens up when you do something like that. And so we've had kind of this connection. So what we're going to do today is actually talk about the realities of what that looks like, and just kind of what the expansion beyond being a solo practitioner looks like, feels like, and some of the highs and some of the lows. We both have offline had a little bit of musings this week about all of the fun things that happen when you move just from being a tax professional into the world of also being the boss, so to speak, and the leader, and have all these different things. So that's what we're going to go to, right? Does that sound good, Jared?
Yeah, sounds great. Let's
You're
commiserate in
so
misery, right? Is that
you're
what we're
so
doing here? But
excited
we're
about
well,
this
probably not so
week.
much negativity. That'll be my ship to sail. But I'm just kidding. But no, we're going to be talking about all kinds of different stuff. The good with the bad, and obviously, if it wasn't more good, I mean, if more chips weren't on the side of this is what I like doing, this is what I enjoy, we wouldn't still be doing it.
That's right.
So yeah,
All right. So
that's
let's kick it
exciting.
off then with your one big thing that you maybe didn't realize when you thought, or maybe just tell me how you got here. Like, how did you kind of little quick origin story about how Jared ended up sitting in an office with I don't know how many staff you have and three offices and just kind of like lay that landscape for what the dream and vision of Jared Foos was.
Well, I bought an office from my mother originally that I worked for like 10 years, something like that. Um, and it was a very well established office. It was doing very well. I will just say that my personal thought was I was ambitious, and I lived in a town called Delaware, and it's one of the fastest growing towns in Ohio. So I thought, man, I want more offices. I thought to myself, the ambitious part of me thought, well, let's replicate this. And what better place to do this is one of the fastest growing towns in Ohio. And so COVID became an opportunity for me, because, commercial tenants were losing commercial owners were losing their tenants. So I thought I can get a heck of a deal on a lease down here. So I did. Um, how did I get a third office? Well, since 2018, um, I had a colleague, I guess you would call her. She was on Ohio. We were on the Ohio NATP board together. And since 2018, she was asking me to buy her firm, buy her firm, buy her firm because she wanted to retire. Well, she caught me in this moment of like vulnerability, like every good relationship ever starts, right? That's how most of us got our wives. But anyways, she caught me with this. If you don't buy my practice, Jared, I'm just going to shut it down because I don't have anybody to sell this to, and I don't want these people to. I don't want to be in this industry too long. So she caught me in the moment, caught me in the feels, and I was like, yeah, I guess I'll take this over. So I don't know if I had this great ambition to have these three offices. Like, I don't think it was designed that way. It just kind of stumbled for me. And my God, I think I've got more gray hair because of it. I didn't design this to be the guy that runs three offices or to be the lead goose in this. That was not my ambition. I originally just started this because I wanted to be closer to home. And I thought that I can grow something organically in a happening town. So how about you? How did you start from nothing to the Bender empire that you are currently controlling, like from the Death Star in Pennsylvania? God, I hope you get the Death Star reference. That's a Star Wars reference.
That's Star Wars. I think I've seen Star Wars.
Yeah.
I don't know about the newer ones, like the old ones, which are probably more
Those,
classic.
those are the better ones
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah. I do get that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
You're
there
welcome.
were a few movies we were allowed to watch. I think Star Wars was one of them.
Good.
And oddly, Indiana Jones also. which,
Harrison Ford connection.
yeah, I guess so. We were allowed to watch that. I have seen those movies. Um, yeah, I mean, I appreciate the shout out for the Bender Empire. I don't think I ever intended on the Empire. And we do joke, I have no plans of the Empire being staying where it's at. I have kind of some crazy ideas and dreams that, yeah, we're just kind of getting started. But um, I would say so. Our first acquisition was in 2018, same kind of thing. I don't think that I at that time had some type of grand ambition. I just was actively like kind of on the ground networking, and I had the idea to say, well, I have to have all these different interactions and people I'm meeting, and it's great. And then I land a client. And I was like, wouldn't it be great to just kind of like supercharge the acquisition of clients by just buying a book and finding somebody who's retiring? Um, Interestingly enough, I actually tried to buy what ended up being our first acquisition about a year and a half or 2 years earlier and got outbid by a much larger firm. So we were like in talks with an individual in another part of town, and he got a better offer. As time and God would laugh at it, I wasn't ready. We were not ready to acquire in the 2 years earlier. And 2 years later, the exact same firm came up
For sale.
basically for private sale. I was approached by somebody at the firm who bought them and said, I see what you guys are doing, and I'm wondering if you've ever considered acquiring. We have this little firm that isn't really fitting into our model. Would you want to buy it? They had no idea that it was the same one that they had outbid me on. And so I ended up buying it 2 years later for like $50,000 less than
Yes.
what we originally thought we would. It had been eroded. It had some issues. But long story short, that just kind of thrust us into, so we immediately had two offices. At the time before that, I think we had one employee and maybe like a part-time administrative assistant. And now all of a sudden I had this second office. That was where we brought one of our sons into the practice. He started, just kind of like spearheading this. And honestly, looking back at that first one, I was so unprepared because we had nothing in place for duplication. Like we were all living in our own little silos. Everything that happened was in my brain. Everybody was doing their own thing. So that first one was such a learning experience for me. And then it just kind of I realized, okay, if I want to do this, I'm going to have some systems in place that like duplicate this thing. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my mind, and so will everybody else, and everybody will hate me. So, yeah, that was kind of how we started. And then since then, same thing. COVID was a blessing. I think COVID was a game changer for business owners and entrepreneurs who stepped in. A lot of people stepped out and got scared at COVID. And then there was like this small handful of us that stepped in and was like, seize the opportunity. And it was the best thing that ever happened to us. And so
Oh yeah.
since,
COVID was a situation where if you were nimble and you were paying attention,
yeah,
like it became a springboard.
it did. Yeah. So since then, since the first one in 2018, we just finished our fifth acquisition in January of this year. So that's kind of where we've gone.
That's crazy. Fifth acquisition. Yeah.
And I'm
Well,
just getting started.
I can tell you that when I bought in 18 and then I started the office in Delaware in 20, we started it with nothing. I started organically, with no clients, no thoughts. And we brought one girl in who is our office manager today, to learn, to take, 6 months to train to how we do what we do. We knew that if we are going to start this office, we had to replicate. And I mentioned before we started recording, like one of the things that changed my practice and how I think is the E-Myth book. And I knew that like Ray Kroc, I needed to make the fries the same in Bangkok as I do in Muncie, Indiana. Okay. So meaning when we do these payrolls, I want them done the same way. We do tax returns. I want them done the same way. We do a set of books. I want them done the same way. So we sent Kate up to Galleon and said, learn as much as you can. And thank God I have uber qualified staff that are way better at this chronological events and organization than I am. I am the chaos. I recognize that of who I am. I'm the guy that comes in and stuff falls out of my pockets and somebody else is picking me up. But they wrote these, what you would probably call SOPs, but I call just handbooks. Basically, if we can take somebody off the street and they can do payroll the same day. They don't have to know what they're doing or why they're doing or how they're doing it. They're just following A, B, C, D, and that's what they do. And obviously that's not a sustainable thing for our industry. Like, you've got to understand the how a lot of times before you understand the why, the why, you know what I mean? Because the why is a depth that not a lot of people grasp within a quick time frame. So we started with just the one employee, thinking we were going to take it slow. I went to a donut shop and ended up getting that owner as a client, and then she lit our business on fire. We went from nothing to like 13 bookkeeping clients in like 4 months. And it was like all hands on deck. Let's try to figure this out. So it exploded. It exploded really quick. And if I'm doing anything, I'm actually pulling the reins back on this specific office because we're still trying to get the qualified people in place. We still feel pretty good about it, but there's only so much we can take on as a workload without sacrificing accuracy or quality. So we're pulling those reins back. And I don't actively, you joked about it or gave me a hard time about the fact that I don't have a sales pitch. I don't really have a sales pitch. We aren't actively pursuing clients at all. We don't advertise. We actually, when clients call, which is about once every 2 weeks, or potential clients, we a lot of times go through the process of trying to eliminate anybody that would not be a good fit for us. So we turn more probably away than we take on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that I would say we've learned as well as we've grown. One of the hardest parts about kind of buying and rolling in multiple firms is that what you're forced with is you have to, and you say this, like, know thyself, and you have to confront who it is that you want to serve, and that's probably like I say at this point, I'm like chief, kind of vision caster, is that I have to create the box that we will play in, because what a lot of times what people don't realize in acquisitions is that everybody runs firms in a different way, and you cannot scale that. It is unscalable. It is chaos, but not in a good way. And so if you, and I guess this is a little bit of a listening point to anybody who's a firm owner. If you're running a firm where you're saying yes to everything and you have no standardized kind of system or process, and you're allowing, this is the really uncomfortable truth, is that you're allowing clients to tell you how to run your business. Like, well, I don't want, this is my favorite, like, well, I don't want to do online banking because, I'm afraid of the government, and I don't think, well, then great, you're not a good fit for us. We're not doing bookkeeping for you if we can't get access to your bank account. Or, for us, we don't do any manual payroll. That like, oh, I don't want to do live, payroll. I want to do after the fact. I want to hold control, all this. Great. You're not a good fit for us. But when you allow clients to like piecemeal what they want, and that was what each time, we've gotten a lot better now, but like that first one, my gosh, I walked in and every single client did something different. There was like no way to standardize anything. It was complete chaos, and not in a good way.
Well,
And
that always comes from a place of desperation, right?
that
You're so
too.
fearful that you're
Yeah.
like, if I don't say yes to this, how do I keep the lights on? You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where, depending on when you're starting these things, like, do you remember when it made national news that the IRS is going to hire 72,000 new IRS agents?
They were going
Because
to
they
carry
had just,
guns too, right?
what's that?
Are they carrying guns
Yeah, they're
too?
going to carry a gun and badge, and they're going to take your firstborn. But when they get there, they also need a stool sample to make sure that they can track you.
Oh, I
That,
missed that
see,
part.
that was all, at least maybe my local news or West Virginia news. I'm just kidding. I don't really know. Um,
Your feed is
no,
different than mine, Jared.
right. We got different clients. I'm just kidding. Um, well, the biggest thing was like our phones started blowing up. I'll bet yours did too, because people had this absolute fear that black SUVs were going to be in their driveway tomorrow. And half of my job was like, okay, with our phones blown up, we've got this net around us to say, okay, what do we want to let through?
Yeah.
Because if you're starting this practice in that period of time when that was happening, you didn't feel that desperation probably. But if you're prior to that or after it, um, I fully understand the idea of, if you are starting out on your own, you don't have a established clientele base. Like, I'll bet you had the same situation that I had with my guy in office. I could sustain losses in this new adventure because I had this thing over here to fall back on. So I don't know if I could probably speak to somebody that's going out literally tomorrow, opening a branch or a location, and that's their whole livelihood. I've never had to come across that, at least in like I don't get a paycheck scenario. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes though that and I agree. I think, one of the things that gets me in a lot of trouble, like this most recent acquisition. I mean, it was because we understood what our box was. And we were like, you either fit in our box or you don't. And basically within like 30 days of figuring out who the client base were, if you didn't fit in our box, we very politely showed you the door. And some people, particularly in acquisitions, and I think this is the important lesson, is that if you're so afraid to let a client go, you're like micro focused on the macro, when the macro is standing in front of you. And so you have
Right.
this massive machine and you're like worried about the one whiner that doesn't, want to do things the way you do it. But I think that's in general, anybody, even if you're starting out, like if you're so desperate to get a client, first off, in our world, yeah, if you don't advertise, you're still finding clients because the minute somebody hears that you do taxes, like, what you do? Oh, can I ask you a question? I'm like hesitant to even say what I do because
I'm the same way.
somebody
I
will
tell people
ask
I drive
me.
a trash truck.
Yes, somebody will like ask me a tax question out of left field, and I'm like, I don't know you. I can't give you.
Here's the question though. When I say I drive a trash truck outside of this office, I visually look like a guy that probably drives a trash truck. I don't think you're going to be able to say, yeah, I drive a trash truck. You
Yeah, that
know,
one doesn't really play for me.
I don't
So,
know what you're going to have to come up with.
what are you gonna
Maybe
say?
be like abstract. You're like, I'm a consultant. I just
Yeah,
consult
yeah,
stuff, nothing very specific. I'm just
that's it.
consultant. So they don't even know what the heck to ask you about.
I fix things. So, yeah, I think the idea of desperation, but that goes across any industry, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Do you ever
absolutely.
come across like someone who sells something and they're so desperate that I don't know. And I'm like, I do feel bad for them, but I'm also like, dude, I will never buy from you because your like
Reek of it.
desperation is oozing. And so, you don't have to be desperate. And even if you are behind the scenes, like even if you are like, and I have been there. I mean, I will tell you,
Hmm.
like I have been, there is not enough money in the bank account to make it to the next day as a business owner. I mean, there is not enough money to make payroll on Friday. What am I going to do? I have been in that position and always said consciously to myself, and again, I do have a deep faith where I'm like, okay, God, what am I supposed to do today? And honest to goodness, the check comes in or whatever. Like, I think that when you can find a way to be like, have a little bit more peace, and that is something that comes outside of the business, you're able to look at it from a different perspective, even if you are really desperate, but like, don't come across that way to clients because it is just yucky.
It's
Um,
kryptonite.
Yeah, it just you can smell it, you can see it. Um, so yeah, so let's talk about like some of those uglies. I mean, I just kind of shared that. I mean, I think one of the mysteries people think, oh, well, and you could make a judgment call. I'm well aware of whatever people have opinions and thoughts. Um, about me or you or whatever. Everybody can make their judgments. Uh, what is one of the things that you like? What's one of the dirty realities behind the scenes, or one of those head in hands moments, or like just kind of one of those things in growing that it's not all roses and peaches.
Okay, so I'll say it's two things for me, at least from my perspective. Um, and it's always been, let's say, first of all, I say it's people. Like you and I talk a lot about culture, and I tell everybody during the interview process, culture is more important than credentials behind your name. It's more important than experience you've had. It's more important than the knowledge you possess. If you don't fit in my culture, you're going to be cancerous. There is no gray area on this. You either fit or you don't. So I think by definition, like I'm the guy that when we hire people, I want them to last forever. I want this employee, and by definition of who I am, I try to see the best in people. Even though I'm very pessimistic, I'm very um, glass half empty kind of guy usually. Okay, but I'm also, when I look at people, my perception is a little bit different. I have hope. You know what I mean? I have this. As soon as before I even hire somebody, I'm thinking, okay, this person is going to last 35 years. I can see where this is going to go, and I can map all this out in my brain, and that's the fairy tale scenario that I can tell myself. But in the reality,
I can
that is
attest
not.
to this because
Oh,
you did this and I was your reality.
literally on the phone the other day, I was like 30 seconds in, and Kelly's like, "Oh my gosh, what are you throwing at the wall here? You need to chill out, sir." Um, So the reality is for me, it's like I have this envisionment and I can see where this person fits, but then people are still people at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I can romanticize this fit with somebody, but if they just don't fit, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, you're wasting your money, and you're wasting your investment, your heart into this person that you probably should just let go, have gone. And it's not a personal thing, it's just they're not going to work out. And that's really hard for me to do because I overinvest. One of the last hires that we had in our other office, I kept her around for 3 years. And it was like, I just kept force feeding this, thinking, okay, if I do more, if I train harder, or if I spend more time investing in this person, and it still comes back to bite me in the biscuits. You know what I mean? So, and then the second thing for me that the ugly stuff is, I can be very, very good in a 6 month to 9 month span of this is a moment of vulnerability. You ready for this?
I am.
I can forecast financially and say, okay, this is what we need to do. What I'm really need to get better at for myself is going to be building in some safeguards from a financial standpoint. And let me just give you an example. Like I put us in a financial position a couple years ago because I accelerated paying off some loans. I mean, I feel very accomplished in the idea that I was able to pay off $250,000 in loans in 3 years. Not even 3 years, 2.5 years.
Mhm.
But you and I both know putting those things in place put me from a tax perspective in these false profits where I'm paying more tax than I would have if I didn't. Or I would have had more capital in the bank to do that. But also that puts an additional strain on me to make sure that ends still meet, that payroll still met. Now everything is fine, everything worked out because I'm not a complete dummy. But the point here is that mental stress that you put on yourself because that ambition behind you is an awesome gift, but it also could be a curse sometimes in some aspects. So reining myself in and being purposeful, at least financially, is a huge thing that I've been trying to personally grow on for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I will absolutely second that, Jared. I have now, recognized through some other kind of mentorship relationships that I realized that same thing, I went a little bit too aggressive on the way that I acquired. And, just behind the scenes, like you can generally, and particularly in our industry, a lot of sellers will seller finance and hold the note, which is great because it allows for you to use, ongoing cash flow to pay off. But I made such aggressive repayment terms that I did the identical thing. I basically sucked all my available cash toward these acquisition debts, not recognizing that at the scale of which we've done that and we're continuing to grow. I have massive, overhead and employees, and we have to have all those people to work. And I kind of was short-sighted thinking that I had to do that in order to make that deal valuable. And now looking at it when I go into my next series of acquisitions, and I jokingly say that because I mean, like, we're getting off here and I have a call with a seller and another one Monday. But like, whenever we do our next ones, uh,
Yeah.
I will be more cognizant of like what the terms are, because I didn't realize that I could adjust that to be more favorable, and I was a little too focused on like the paying off of the debt, but didn't recognize the backside of it until it was like, oh crap. And that's the other part that people don't see, right? Is that you're like, oh, I mean, but I have literally not taken my own paycheck because I'm like, I can't do this. I'm too tight. I don't want to, stress the
Right.
business out. And I hope at some point, like, I'm getting to that point where I can say I, took a paycheck every single pay of the entire year. That will be a big goal. But it's still a reality for a lot of business owners that, you choose that business first before your own family. And I think people don't recognize that. That's definitely that hard part too, of if you don't have that gut for being an entrepreneur where you're like, yeah, I'm going to put that first, you know, cautious before you go adding in staff and all those people. Cause I mean, you have to be, they come first. There are families that, rely upon us. Like I'm not going to take my
Here's a
own stuff first.
here's a thought, and I thought about this the other day. Now, I'm just piggybacking off what you said. Like, you're talking about intestinal fortitude of
Yes.
saying, this is the lifeblood. I've got to make sure it's fed because it keeps me fed. And that's not just you alone. Like, and I know that your husband works with you in the firm and all that kind of stuff. Like, I thought about this the other day from the aspect, like, the entrepreneur. There's the entrepreneur, but then there's the spouse as well.
Yes.
And then that's a whole nother thing too, because I thought about, like, why don't we bring our spouses on sometime and just talk what it's been like to be an entrepreneur's spouse? Because the joke I always tell people, my wife understands nothing about what I do. Okay. So, like, our youth group was doing a Valentine's banquet or some giveaway or something. And I offered to give a free 1040 to be raffled off. And she said, well, why don't you give away a tax return? And I said, dear, that is a tax return. But the point I'm trying to say here is that stress. And, you
I
said
love
that.
that so much.
So there's a reason that I got a trust protector for Foos Garvin if I die. So my wife is the beneficiary and the trustee of everything in the trust, but Shelby is the trust protector, meaning, okay, everything Foos Garvin related, that's Shelby's job. That's not a Sarah thing.
It's not for
She
her.
answers to no one. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, but you said one of your goals is to have a paycheck all year round. This would have been the very first year that I would have been able to take a paycheck the whole year, because, like I said, this is relatively a new thing for me. I bought my first firm in 2018, but I've been acquiring and paying off debt and doing all these things. Acquiring 3 offices in 7 years, in the grand scheme of things, is, in my opinion, ambitious.
Yeah.
And I recently had to recoach my wife back through this. Like, hey, I'm not going to be taking a paycheck in November, December, and January, because I'm going to self-sacrifice to bring this person from Texas to our firm. We're going to be fine because we got all this other stuff here. I've supplemented it. I've worked it out. But the idea there, 'cause that other side of that coin to us is this spouse over here thinking, okay, there's no stability in life, right? Like they're used to that corporate job where they're getting the W-2 every time. As long as they don't get fired, they're going to have that paycheck. So when you have that entrepreneur, that intestinal fortitude that you personally have, but maybe your spouse doesn't. So there's a struggle there with that too. So I didn't know if that was something that you want to talk about in the future, but I thought it was a decent idea.
No, I mean, I say that I think this is and you do, it's interesting if you listen to, and I know you're not like Mr. Podcast, but you know, if you listen to some people in the like business and podcast space, and you know, a lot of people are talking about now how important your life partner is. And I think that again, it's sort of underspoken because for a lot of people who are, you know, like you and I, maybe are the front people, and that's who people see. What you don't see is, you know, for me, like you don't see the rock behind the scenes. My husband is a, you know, I don't know if he'll ever get on this podcast. I'm just going to tell you, Jared, like he, you know, I'll ask him. I don't even know if he's ever listened to it. Okay. But he's behind the scenes, but he's a rock. And so same thing, like the person you have with you, because at the end of the day, when like crap gets hard as a business owner, you even, and I had to learn this too, like when we were small, I'm a little bit of an oversharer, I guess. And so I would openly talk about, you can't do that. You can't do
Right.
that in a business, particularly when you have employee, like you have to sort of restrain yourself. You have to force yourself to, and that's a hard balance because you can't, you know, I have this culture where I want everybody to like be on the same team and mission, but I also can't be as open and transparent about some of those personal struggles on a day-to-day basis because not everybody can handle that. And so, you know,
Right.
somebody could hear like 1 ounce of a struggle and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm losing my job." And it's like, "No, no, 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 that's not it at all." But, you know, there's this like weird fine line balance to you know, staffing and oh gosh, I mean, this is what we talked like I think that I also see so much. One of the hardest things to do as the like the the leader is fire people.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very hard.
it's hard. It sucks. It never gets easier. And I wish it did, but like it really. I mean, I had one that was kind of easy. Honestly, it was like one this year, and it was like the easiest fire ever. It was like 5 minutes, but like it's hard because I I think the same thing. I think I care. I see more out of somebody than they often see in themselves. And so you have to sort of disconnect and say, you know, unfortunately, what you're doing here isn't going to work for us. It's rarely a skill issue. It's
Yeah.
almost always a personality
Culture,
issue,
ambition,
culture, ambition, um, you know,
drive.
yeah,
Well, that's the same as ambition. You
it
know,
is.
I told you I did this week, right? Okay. So let me say this. I think I've told you about this in the past. I use a company called Ripple
Yeah.
for like interpersonal things that, like, for example, you know, some staff members will feel comfortable and confident to come talk to me about things like displeasures or things they're frustrated about. And then there are some staff members like, oh God, I would never go talk to Jared about that. I don't have the, you know, gumption. I don't have the ambition. I don't know how that conversation go. I don't want to create conflict. So we use Ripple to kind of keep our thumb on the pulse of our staff to say, how are you feeling about stuff? What types of things? How do you feel about your teammates and that kind of thing? Probably last year, the year before, I don't remember exactly when it is. I'm terrible with dates. But we had a staff member that just was not working out. It was not a skill issue. It was a culture issue. And it was a situation where on Ripple, you'd self-score yourself like out of 5. And her self-score was like a 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. And then when you look at what her teammates thought of her, it was like a 2 point something. And it was one of those things where we sat down with her and I just showed her the Ripple scores. And I said, look, I don't think, I want you to understand this is not a personal affront of you. Like no one thinks you're a terrible person or anything like that. But it's clear you're not fitting in here culturally. She's like, yep, I totally agree. I'm kind of hard to work with. She says, I appreciate your time. Thanks. I'll get my stuff. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. So I didn't even fire her. I just pointed it out to her, and she was like, "Yep, I get it." And it
Wow.
was good. So data was very important in that aspect. But I had a guy that I recently just let go. It was 2 minutes. I said, "Look here, I want you. I told you and every other candidate that when we hired everybody, is culture is important. I don't see you fitting here culturally long term.
Yeah.
If you want me to, I can go into the reasons and what led to this decision. But at the end of the day, this is your last day. You need to turn your keys in to Shelby, and I'll write you a neutral. What do they call those? Like the reference?
Severance?
Yeah,
Severance?
I'll write you a neutral reference. I'm not gonna say anything bad, nothing overly
Oh,
good.
oh, oh, yeah, right, a reference.
Yeah, and safe travels home.
Yeah.
I said, "Do you have
Yeah,
any questions?"
it's
Nope.
hard. You mentioned data. I think that's important. And I don't know, we do a lot of tracking, and this is like a constant. So from a culture perspective, and we're trying to figure out how to mix all these things together. And I've talked to you about this, like we run on EOS, and so we follow an EOS procedures, but we then like have a check-in every week with like just culture. So like, what was your high, what was your low?
Right.
Everybody answers that. We used Entree Leadership for that. And then we have like an internal scorecard, so everybody tracks their own metrics. Then we talk about them weekly at our weekly stand-ups. Like we have all these different metrics. And since doing that and really pushing, and that's been like our big core focus for the past year and a half, is getting all these different, and it's not where I want it to be. I want it, to be better, but I think it's really helped everybody, not just me, like be able to see what I kind of already gut check knew, but also everybody has insight into the people on their team, into, the people that are like the managers with people below them, where they can see somebody's really struggling. Sometimes you realize that people are having issues outside of work. And so, like, what they're coming into work with is not necessarily work related. And so you can have some empathy for that. But it's been really helpful. So I think that's another one of those things that I don't I don't know that there's a handbook, or at least I haven't found it yet, that told me that one of the core focuses of growing a practice is going to have nothing to do with numbers.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess it might in the sense of like tracking numbers of what people are doing, but it's all about people. I mean, it really is about like culture, people, how that portrays to your clients. And I mean, just it's over and over and over, like this repeated, you hear, I mean, I know that's what every day feels like, is your people, because your people are everything. I mean,
No, 100%.
they're everything to your culture, your organization, the way that your clients see you, um, your ability to grow and, dream bigger. It's all about those people.
So along those lines, I want to let's shift gears a little bit, and I want to ask you directly. Like, we've we obviously have multiple locations. That's one of the similarities we have. Like, we're talking about culture, we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about people and finding people, hiring people, installing a culture, installing like people of leadership. How do you do that for your firm? And I can speak to how I've done it, but it is what it is. How do you do that over your 5 locations?
Well, so I should clarify, we only have two physical locations, just five
Gotcha.
books of business
Gotcha.
rolled into that. So we right only now have two. Um, how do we do that? We have an executive leadership team. So I am not the sole leader, and I will say, full disclosure, that the vast majority of the leadership team is family, which has been earned though, because they're not there because they just happen to have the same last name. Because actually, our most recent, my oldest stepson, like we kind of took him from his job. He had been a controller for a company locally for like 10 plus years. And so we actually finally got big enough where I could, kind of rein him over. So it's when we look at one, it's a team, and it's giving everybody very clear direction about, what then they're individually like responsible for overseeing and growing and building and doing. And so all of that requires effort in leadership from, you first, and then building out the team, giving everybody clear direction. And how you get there is 100% a culture thing. And so it's not just, do I have a good attitude? But if you're going to be in leadership, for us, it's, do you see the vision? And for us, the vision is, do you see the ability for us to duplicate and create something that is a name brand known, either regionally or possibly nationally, as a provider that services small business entrepreneurs. And that's what we do. That's who we are. It's our culture. It's our mission. It's our passion. And if you're not at least able to see how all of us together could get there, then you're, not going to have a place on like that leadership. You can still have a place in our organization. But so really, like, the buy-in to the bigger vision, I think, is what, same thing, skills. Of course, you have to have some level of skills to be in leadership, but and everybody's like levels up. I just think, I guess I don't know. And it's hard if you're coaching like somebody younger to be like, be hungry is like what I would say there is, I don't think enough people, I think that we can you can read a million books, but what you have to do is be like hungry, inquisitive, and humble. Like, if you're somebody young, I mean, I have a couple young people right now that, like, I see really big potential because they're hungry, they're eager, they're willing to like ask the right questions and then do a little bit more to get even to, the next thing. Like, there's just this weird component that I don't know. I guess I don't know quite how to like
When you see
knuckle it
it,
down. I don't know. What do you think?
well, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'll just tell you what I've done. I focus less on skills. I focus on less on accomplishments in the past or credentials. First and foremost, we have roles, right? And you think about the spokes in a wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody has a job. Everybody could be, I mean, depending on what type of role we're hiring for, or what role we need to have filled, we specifically look at personality traits. So we have a recruiter that we have on staff that finds new staff members or recruits for us. And once they get through her, then we interview them ourselves. And if we get it, and which, by the way, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, the Titanic probably saw more of what these people are than we are in these interviews. I honestly hate interviews because they tell nothing. You
Nothing.
know what I mean? Like, all it does is probably fluff me up for some disappointment, really what it comes down to. But really, once we get past that interview with us, we get into personality assessments. And that's one of those things where I really feel like personality assessment tests undress you at your core. It brings you down to your base core and gives you data points to say, okay, obviously, if I'm hiring a bookkeeper, like, and that's their main job, what I'm looking for personality wise is somebody that's going to be willing to be sitting in a room by themselves, never speaking to another human being, and being comfortable with that, but being driven to be accurate and to be efficient. And those are personality traits. Those are not necessarily anything as far as ambition. That's a personality. I'm okay with sitting here. So meaning, if I'm hiring a bookkeeper, I'm not looking for somebody that's dominant or that is a people pleaser or is interpersonal.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that those people can't do that job. It just means that they're not going to be happy in that position long term. So right now in my Cincinnati office, I'm basically hiring for all positions. And what I've been doing recently is, doing these personality assessments and thinking, okay, I'm not giving anybody in that office any roles or responsibilities. Earn it. Make me give me no other choice other than to say, you're in charge. You know what I mean?
I do.
And I think that you spoke to it from the aspect, and I am an 80-year-old man sitting on my front porch saying, get off my lawn. But this is coming from a culture, and I'm just going to jokingly say this. I think soccer moms across the country have ruined this generation. Okay. That's a joke. Mostly there's some truth to that in my mind
It's
because
okay.
everybody gets a participation trophy.
Oh, gosh.
Everybody gets this. Oh, you did so good. And you heard we were at national conference together, that keynote speaker talking about how everybody needs to be like coddled the whole dang day.
What did he say? He told us that
Affirmation or something.
like the average employee, current employees entering the workforce right now, expect their
Yeah.
general expectation is that they will be affirmed or uplifted in their position 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I what I can't even I'm like you may not even see me 3 times a week. First
Yeah.
off,
I was raised by a woman that gave me like 3 times an affirmation in 40 years. Like, what are we talking
you're
about
still
here?
waiting on your third one.
Yeah.
Come
Here's,
on, Mom, give him a shout out. He's doing a good job.
I will tell you, this is sticks in my brain. I can, like, the day I die, I can put a chalk outline where I was when this happened. Like one of the first ones where I was in Chicago teaching for the national conference. And my mother came up and said, "I'm very proud of you. You're doing
Aw.
excellent." And I was like, whoa. And I was supposed to teach in like 4 minutes, but I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Did that just happen? But I didn't need that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't need that affirmation. I'm self-driven. I'm self-ambitious. And I'm going to you can't tell me I'm not going to can't accomplish something. I'm going to kick the wall down or go through the door until it happens.
Yeah.
But moving forward, once I get these people in the right places, I recognize, like, I use the analogy of like a tree. Everybody's part of the tree, right? I'm the root system. I'm the foundation. Like, I got to feed myself to feed others. And the expectation of how this company is going to go is based on my shoulders, meaning how I set the standard, how I set the foundation, the morale that I have, or the expectation of myself, the standard that I hold myself to is what I expect for everybody up. And obviously you got the trunk, and then your leadership positions are going to be the main stem branches. And then you have your cog people, which there's nothing wrong with cog people. They're doing a job. They don't have ambition to be a main branch. But my
Mhm.
job is to feed myself, build this firm foundation, this culture,
Mhm.
and then feed it up to everybody else. But I still need those leadership positions to be like, okay, here's the vision, here's the dream, here's the drive, here's what we're going to do. So I will say, for me personally, the hiring process is important for us, and not wasting time on people that, even though that their personality trait fits, if they don't have that personal ambition, I'm done. Like, one of the things, one of our core values for our staff and for myself that I've tried to establish a couple years ago is your job every day is not to just do books, not to do payrolls, not to do tax returns. Your job every day is to show up and try to be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. That's it. How do we be the best version of ourselves? Because the people we serve deserve our very best. And if you can't do it, fake it till you can, or get out.
I
That's
think
just
that's I
that's
think
how we've
that's
done it.
interesting. Do you have like defined core values?
Somewhere.
Okay. So
It's not on a wall or anything like that.
this was mine is on my phone, and so we have 6, and these are like day
Yeah.
1 um about how we operate, and this is like, again, I think it's so interesting, and I feel positive for, because we were both in a little bit of a musing perspective this week, but culture matters, and so I'll just tell you ours as well, which are probably, comparatively simple, but honest, approachable, dependable, innovative, community, and grit. And that is our 6 core values, and everything that we try to do, and I have to remember this as well, because inevitably something happens, right? And somebody has a freak out, something. And I think that if you kind of have those as your core, like if you have core values that drive what you want to do, every time you're confronted with something, if you're not a reactionary person, you can take a deep breath and be like, you're smacked in the face, and you say, okay, how do I
Pivot.
respond to this in a way that meets my core values?
Right. And it doesn't matter what industry we're in. And we're obviously in a tax industry and an accounting industry. It doesn't matter what industry you're in.
No.
because you can teach skills, you can teach ways and SOPs and how to do the job. What you can't teach is this underlying personal pursuit of growth
Yeah.
and this underlying pursuit of achievement and also trying to be the best version of yourself. Because if you focus on those things, but you also know how to do this job, you're going to be better than somebody else in a foxhole somewhere else because they're focusing on, I want to be the best version of myself. But not only am I having those core values there, but my vision, my perspective is on the people that we're doing this for. Like one of the things that I cast this to my staff is no matter what we're doing for our taxpayers, no matter how big our role is, whether we're handling AR, AP, everything, or we're just doing a payroll or we're just doing a tax return, the things that we do on a daily basis for this individual could potentially be the difference between them putting food on their plates or their tables for the family or not. So I liken this to like a mechanic, like when you're a mechanic and you're doing a brake job, you're just doing a brake job on a car, but you're not just doing a brake job on a car. You're doing it for Sam, the single mom who drives her kids to school every day. So you want to make sure that brake job is perfect, that she can count on the work that you did to provide security, safety, and everything for that drive. So
Yeah.
it's not just about what we do. It's about who we're doing it for and how we do it, the approach we take to it, the seriousness or the appropriate fear or the appropriate pursuit of the best version of yourself. So I don't know if there is no magic elixir or program that you can sit and watch and say, ooh, this has worked for everybody else, so it's got to work for me. People are people, right? At the end of the day, people are people. There's going to be some people that fit and excel. There's going to be some people that don't fit and don't excel. But I also think there's something to be said about, okay, if you got somebody falling behind, how do you coach them up? How do you get the best out of those people?
Hmm.
And that's where leadership comes in. It's really hard to define because it's going to look different for everybody else. How you motivate this person versus this person, completely different.
Yeah, people are motivated differently. I think that's probably the other like personal aspect that for me, one of, my personal missions, and that's what extends through our company, is that um, there is in a world that sometimes feels, and I know that again, there can be a perception, right? And I always joke and say I'm an unabashed capitalist. Um, yes, I like to make money. Like I'm not gonna, because if I don't, then the people who do work for us won't have positions. So like if I'm constantly operating from the position of like we're not running a charity because that doesn't
Right.
employ people. And I
Right.
believe work gives people purpose. And then I also believe that working for good people who, just like you just said, Jared, like working for somebody like you is a better communal benefit because you're giving somebody a position where they have that's not just showing up and punching a clock and nobody cares about the rest of their life. And there is more to it. And I think that sometimes also as leaders, we lose sight of the fact that we can change the world a little bit. We can change it in our own backyard by having places that do value people, that value them and their personal worth, give them great opportunities at a career that they can enjoy and excel at, and not hate. I mean, because lots of people hate and their lives suck. They hate their job, and they're just punching a
Yeah.
clock and they have no purpose. And it's more than that. And I think that more people, if you're good, it does change the world. It changes the landscape and shows people that there's a different way to do work, and even get a little, work-life balance or whatever I mean, I don't know. I don't have work-life balance, but
No, that's that. But that's what we're all shooting for, right? That's the purpose.
someday.
That's our why, right? That's
It
our
is.
why. That's our
Yeah.
20-year vision. That's our 10-year vision. That's our
Yep.
5-year vision. We're trying to build this and scale this so we can eventually step away and take less of a role, right?
Right.
I mean, I tell people that are all the time new clients that are like, hey, we're starting this business. And they're like, I usually tell them there's three types of owners, right? The owner that thinks that they can just do it better because they did it over here than what their bosses did. They're just an operator. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There are business owners that want to scale something, make a lot of money at it, and basically still stay involved. And then there are owners that in the Shangri-La situation where they're like, hey, we build something that creates residual income for the rest of my life that I don't have to be attached to. I don't have to do stuff every day, Ed. And a lot of people, if they were given the choice, or if you could magically say this is definitely going to happen if you follow this path, I think everybody's choosing that path. You know what I mean? Like, but it takes a special person with a special plan and a tactical scaling priority to
Yeah.
make that happen.
Yeah.
So in your past, in how you've done this, what's been some of the scaling techniques that you've used or been cognizant of to try to make that process happen?
Well, I mean, we mentioned, or, how we follow process, like EOS has been incredibly helpful to creating clear processes, understanding and defining who you are, who you serve, maintaining boundaries. So again, establishing so much constant, consistent, repeatable processes that there's a box, you either fit in the box or you do not, and then saying no.
Yeah.
And that is the only way to scale. And you cannot, because you cannot say yes to things that are not repeatable. And so you must say no. You must like guard that with just fervor and intensity to be like, nope, this is not who we serve. And this is not what we do. And so for us, that's, we're very clear. And I think I've told you some of the things, we don't do a lot of things. But what we do, we do really, really well. So,
Right.
we won't take in any of the one-offs. Like everything has to be full, all in one house,
Yeah.
service. That's us.
Yeah.
What about you?
Same thing. Like,
Mhm.
if we're in an industry a lot like other industries that there's lots of ways to do what we do, but I am unapologetic. If you don't do it my way or the system that we have, you're not going to be here long. And, but understanding that if you want to bring up a potentially more efficient or accurate way, my ears are open to that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I went to college in the show me state. Show me it works. Show me that's not going to sacrifice accuracy just for efficiency. Prove to me that this system is flawed, that we can do it a better way. And so far, honestly, in the last 5 to 8 years, we've not had anybody take concept to fruition without sacrificing something. And
Right.
it's not some things we don't want to sacrifice. So doing the same thing at the same places. And honestly, all it is about creating predictable results, right? That's really all what it comes down to is if we do it this way, are we creating predictable results? And that's something that can be across all areas of business is the process in which we do it. Does it produce the same result, which is in our industry, an accurate and ethical tax return or accurate books? And we're not going to sacrifice that system just because we want to do it fast.
And I think the big takeaway for anybody, thinking, oh, that sounds so rigid, but recognize, and I think you would say the same thing. And I'm definitely like, if I'm now evaluating new firms to buy, if you don't have any of those processes, the value,
Chaos.
you're already chaos. And honestly, because of how fast our industry is moving, you probably will be that person that closes and doesn't sell because it's unbuyable. And so if you're owning a business, and this goes across any industry, but if you're owning a business and you don't have consistent systems and processes, the average small business buyer right now is savvy. They understand that that's how you can grow a business. And if you don't have those things, your value has just, if anything, but we completely declined. So it's imperative to the value and health of your company. And you get better staff because they're not stressed out.
Well, and there's no guesswork for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Like if you're hiring a whole new staff for a new location, like, don't you want to give them guidance, a path to follow
Yeah.
to say, this is how we do this every time?
Yeah.
Like I had a client not that long ago. He was like, I'm opening up 2 more locations to sell this product. And he was a retail store. And I'm like, dude, your processes and your systems are chaos. Like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, we're out of money. And then you accidentally open a drawer to find some gum or something. You found $50,000 in checks in there. You don't have a process as simple as take the checks to the bank. So you want to go open up 2 other locations where you have no process in location 1?
Sounds like
Like
a winning plan.
you don't even know this yet, but you've already lit those 2 on fire. Not a client anymore.
Not a client. Didn't fit. All right, bring us in for a landing, Jared. This was a good therapy session. Is this
Yeah.
therapy?
Yeah, well, I had it called something else yesterday or the day before, whatever day that was. But yeah, I mean, there's always the good side and the bad side of the coin, right? And being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, no matter what industry you're in, there's a practical side of things, there's a strategical side of things, and there's an emotional side of things. And you, like anything else, I think that the things that we've discussed today is having all of those. Still a journey, right? You're still going to have the ups, you're still going to have the downs, but that intestinal fortitude that every entrepreneur has to have to get you through these moments. But there are definitely key things that you should have in place, systems, protocols that help guide you, guide your staff. And for me, growth is important and being able to do these things. But like I said, what are you willing to sacrifice for that? And a lot of times for the entrepreneur, it's mostly our time, but we also don't want to sacrifice our well-being, our mental stability, that kind of thing. So my takeaway from all of this, honestly, is there's going to be wins, there's going to be losses. What did the 76ers, the Philadelphia 76ers basketball program in the NBA used to say? Trust the process, because eventually there is that end of the rainbow here. So for me, having the mental or the intestinal fortitude to go through the winds and the storms and the things like that, and knowing it's going to be okay because you've built something. Keep it growing. Keep your eyes on the end of the tunnel. Don't keep your eyes at the thing in front of your face. So, I don't know if you're running a business. I hope this was helpful. Who knows? Maybe it was just Kelly and I complaining. I don't know. However you perceive this.
Complaining, but yeah, I think that's a good takeaway. If you and tell us maybe if you run a business and you think, hey, thanks for giving some transparency to what sometimes feels like a hard road. We see you. We're out here doing the same thing, and you drive us all to be better. I love watching people succeed. You know that, and thanks for listening, and hope you learned something.